an earlier job, which might have been cut and pasted.
And they used it in the tender submission.
The fact remains, though, that that has obviously been superseded, hasn't it, by the document at page 1064, which is dated the 15th of February 2022, I believe the day of the initial works.
And this was used in the document, this was submitted?
Yes.
Okay.
This is what has been supplied as part of the documentation. And if you look over the page, you can see it has a, to the next page, please. So you can see it's signed Mr. Farah at the end. But I mean, if you just look over the page, no, you've gone too far, I think. We're 1065. Yes, there we go. So at 1065, you can see that what it does is to set out a pre-dive checklist.
Yes.
Yes, so as part of the dive plan, attached to it is this pre-dive checklist.
Yes.
And it has a whole range of different things that they are considering and either are ticked or not ticked, correct? Nothing to do with plugs.
Correct.
And going back to the dive plan itself, we can put that on the screen as well, please. That's at 1064, as I say, dated the 15th of February. On any view, appears to supersede anything that might have been sent as part of the original contract on the 10th of May of 2020.
I don't know if the risk or the hazard has disappeared. It's still there. It's the same hazard that existed before. But I agree with you that there is nothing in this document that speaks about using the plugs.
No. And the reason for that, it seems clear to me, is because the diving has got nothing whatever to do with the plugs in the pipe. Has it?
The diving that was done on the perimeter work has nothing to do with the plugs on the pipe?
Yes. That's the question.
I don't know. I really cannot.
No.
I cannot say that.
Forgive me. You are the head of health and safety. Is it the position that the plugs in relation to that pipe have got anything to do with diving or not? If this had all been above water, would it have been any different? Would the works that needed to be doing, if the riser was being replaced above the water line, you'd still use plugs, you'd still have the same removal of the riser, you'd still have the flange put on, you'd still have the new riser fitted, all of that would have been exactly the same, wouldn't it?
Yes.
The only difference here is that this was below the water level, correct?
Correct.
So the dive plan relates only to diving in and out of the hyperbaric chamber. Look at what it says. Method statement, at the bottom of the screen or where you've got it there, method statement, the last of that paragraph. You've gone too far on the screen. Go back where you were. Method statement, dive from barge to chamber, access port at SL36 riser.
Yeah, I agree.
Back.
I agree that this
use of barge ladder for water access and exit. This has got nothing whatever to do with the plugs.
I agree that this method statement has nothing to do with the plugs.
Well, this is the method statement that was being used, isn't it?
Well, I assume so.
Well, I hope so, because it's dated the 15th of February 2022, when the work was being done.
I accept that.
Good. So where we are then is this, is there is a separate work permit to work, for diving, correct?
Yes.
That permit relates to diving in and out of the hyperbaric chamber.
Correct.
There is another work permit that deals with all the work that needs to be done, which includes the question of the barriers.
That's right.
And that was being supervised by Mr. Marjad Singh.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I've got it.
Much appreciated. Let's go to another issue, okay? Let's go to your witness statements that you dealt with the question of rescue, right?
Yes.
At paragraph 35, you said it came to the knowledge of the ICT that persons were diving inside the pipeline in the wake of Mr. Budram's rescue. And based on your qualifications, knowledge and experience in occupational health and safety, you advised the incident commander that diving into the pipeline was unsafe. And then at paragraph 37, this is what you said. And this is also based on your qualifications, knowledge, and experience, correct? You said,
Yes.
I believe it was unsafe to dive within the pipeline at that time without a continuous air supply with a tank and a tether. The rescue divers would have at least needed a rope with them and supply of air. They would have needed a tank to be on them as an emergency air supply in case their regular air supply was interrupted. Air and a means in communication and extraction were three things they needed for any rescue dive inside the pipeline to be safe. And you still maintain that?
Yes.
Yes. And so I want to point to you that as a member of the ICT, were you aware that at 6:30 p.m. on the Friday, that when a rescue plan was being offered, when Conrad Beddoe arrived at the scene, it was supported by commercial diving equipment and experienced divers, and I refer to paragraph 40 of Andrew Farrer's evidence. That is at page 448 at volume 1 of the witness statement bundle, paragraph 40. Were you, as a member of the ICT, were you aware of that?
At around 6:30 p.m., Conrad arrived with all of the surface supply equipment which we brought onto the barge. The rescue plan was modified so that we could now enter with commercial equipment.
Pause there, please. I want to make a note of this. At around 6:30, Conrad arrived with all commercial equipment.
Yes.
Well, all the equipment.
With all surface supply equipment.
Surface supply equipment. Yes.
And later on it says the rescue plan was modified so that we can now enter with commercial equipment.
Yeah.
I remember there was a, yes.
And you're agreeing with that?
Yeah, Subsea Global came around that time.
No, later Subsea Global came.
They came later.
Oh, Conrad came with equipment?
Yes, Conrad came with equipment at 6:30 p.m. And at 7:14 p.m. Subsea came with dive support vessels, also with all the necessary equipment that Mr. Alvin Sitaram told us that could be used to do a rescue.
Right. I know Subsea Global came at some time that night, and that they had everything that was necessary, except for divers.
Yes, because Subsea could not use their divers.
Yeah.
Yes. And
so I just want to be clear, do you agree with this? That you were aware of that?
I did not know that someone named Conrad Beddoe came.
All right, forget his name. You knew someone came, a diver.
Yes, divers came.
So as far as you're leaving aside the names of the individuals, you in the ICT were aware that divers had arrived with equipment,
I don't know what equipment they came with, but shortly after, a lot of equipment came.
and then Subsea Global arrived,
Yes.
whoever they were, and they had the commercial equipment necessary.
That's right.
Right. So you knew that at the time that it was happening, is that
Yes.
the position? Thank you.
And you also knew that there were divers that LMCS had available who had commercial diving experience.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, because I mean, it was an assumption, but yes, that was my assumption, that they were good divers, that they were experienced and trained.
And before I refer you to the evidence that Catherine Balkisoon gave us, you know Catherine Balkisoon was
Yes.
a member of the ICT.
Yes.
But before I refer you to that evidence, you also had information at the ICT that they were willing to go into the pipeline to do a rescue.
Yes, we got feedback from Catherine, and I think whoever else was on that divers, people wanted to dive.
And based on the evidence you have given that I just referred you to, they had the commercial equipment, they had all the equipment that a dive could have taken place.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know whether the ICT, apart from the Catherine Balkisoon talking to them and relaying the information to the ICT, do you know whether the ICT has sent anybody to talk to them?
Well, Catherine was the person on the site.
Catherine was the person on the site.
She represented the ICT on the site.
So she communicated all that information to the ICT.
Yes.
And you agree to that. So the question now is, do you know whether the ICT had any discussion with them?
Through Catherine, it would have only been through Catherine.
Through Catherine.
Yeah.
And were there discussions that no diving should take place?
Well, at one point in time when we found out that at least one person was diving, the decision was that it should stop, and that was communicated.
Yes. So the ICT made that decision?
Yes.
And it was communicated by?
I think it was communicated by Catherine.
By Catherine?
I think so.
But who communicated it to Catherine? Mr. Piper?
Might have been. I'm
been.
not sure. But I assume it would have been Mr. Piper.
No.
Time.
Around 7 p.m.
So after Bedo, I appreciate you didn't know his name, but after the diver arrived and the equipment, or before?
Well, after the diver and before the equipment.
Right, between the two.
Yeah.
Right. When the equipment arrived, was there a review of the no diving ban?
The reason why we said no diving.
No, answer that question first, then add whatever you like. Was there a review of the no diving ban at the point at which the equipment arrived?
Continually, yes, there was a review.
Continually there was a review. Did it change?
It never changed.
So the ban remained in place?
Well, the decision to not allow an attempted rescue to take place remained in place.
Not quite the question I'm asking you. The question I'm asking you is, there was a general ban on diving, or diving into the pipe, or diving into the hyperbaric chamber. Which was it?
There was an advice at some point in time, and I don't know that it was repeated. I don't know that it was enforced.
Right. None of those answer my question. The question is, first of all, was there a general diving ban, or was it limited to the pipe?
It was limited to a pipe rescue, yeah.
Right. No diving in the pipe?
Correct.
Right. That's the first thing. Right. Your understanding is that that happened for the first time between the diver arriving, experienced diver arriving, and the equipment arriving.
Yes.
And you said already about 7 o'clock-ish, which would fit in with that timeline. Right?
Yes.
So about 7 o'clock-ish. There was a review of whether that ban should remain in place once the equipment arrived. That's what I understand you to be saying.
I don't know if we reviewed the ban. I cannot say that the ICT reviewed the ban.
Right, well, that's what I'm asking you,
Yeah.
see, because obviously things were changing, and I need to know whether once the equipment arrived that could have been used to effect a rescue, whether there was a review of the no diving ban.
No, there was no focus on a ban. There was a focus on a rescue.
Well, the initial ban was you can't dive into the pipe because it's unsafe.
Correct.
That was your position.
Yes.
And that was the IMT position, right? Equipment arrives that is capable of being used to effect a rescue.
Correct.
All I want to know is, once you were made aware of the arrival of that equipment, did you, as the head of HSE, Health and Safety, did you say, look, we need to review whether or not we should be stopping them going into the pipe? What was happening once you knew this equipment had arrived?
There was no focus on a ban.
Right.
The focus was on a rescue.
Right, so it just remained in place.
Yes, and we needed several things to effect a rescue.
Well, you said so in your statement.
No, that was for the dive. We needed more things than that for a rescue.
No. Paragraph 37 in your statement, it's been pointed out to you by Mr. Maharaj already. Paragraph 37, just let's bring it up on the screen. It's at page 1320. There we are. You've got it in front of you, I think.
I'll see it on the screen.
Yes, I believe it was unsafe to dive within the pipeline. Well, what was the purpose of diving within the pipeline?
I have no idea what the dive was about. My advice.
Really?
No, hold on.
Is that a fair answer?
Yeah, what I understand from seeing on YouTube subsequently was that it was an attempted rescue, having traversed vertically downward at about 10 feet into the horizontal.
Mr. Archibald, please. I'm only interested, for the moment at any rate, in what you were thinking at the time in the IMT. Never mind about what you subsequently learnt on social media. I tried to ignore it myself. But doing your best to place yourself there at the time, you say, I believed it was unsafe to dive within the pipeline at the time, correct?
Correct.
Right. And there was only one purpose for diving in the pipeline, wasn't there? It wasn't for fun, that's for sure.
Certainly.
No.
That is.
And that was in order to effect some kind of rescue.
That's right. I believe so.
You believe so. So what you're saying in this statement, which you prepared for us, is this. I believed it was unsafe to dive within the pipeline at that time, without 1, continuous air supply, 2, a tank, 3, a tether. The rescue divers would have at least needed a rope, that's the tether, with them, and a supply of air, which you've expressed. They would have needed a tank to be on them as an emergency air supply. In other words, if some sort of snag in the hose going up to the surface, they had a separate air supply. That's what you meant by that, isn't it? A separate tank. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. And their regular air supply was in case it was interrupted. Air and a means of communication. So that's a fourth thing. Some way, although you could use the rope, presumably.
Yes.
Means of communication and extraction were the 3 things that they needed for any rescue dive inside the pipeline to be safe.
Correct.
Right. So just pausing in time, as Mr. Maharaj has asked you about, these men have arrived. There's been a ban put on diving. These things have now arrived, haven't they?
Those things have arrived, yes.
Right. You had concluded at that point in time that it might be safe to dive, do I
No.
take it? Right. But this, if I may say so, is a logical approach, isn't it? As to the sort of things that you might think someone would need in order to effect a rescue. Correct?
Well, it's based on my knowledge of confined space entry
Right.
on land.
All right, well, it seems reasonable enough to me, I would say. But anyway, that was your view at the time.
Yes.
And once that equipment, which you described yourself as being the sort of minimum level
That's right.
in order to make it safe,
That's it.
once that had arrived, what were you saying in the IMT? Look, the equipment's here, we've got the divers, why don't we do it?
We did not have divers who were willing to traverse the horizontal portion of
Is
the
that
land.
right?
As far as I know, as far as
thought-
I believe.
I thought you told Mr. Maharaj earlier that you knew that there were divers who were prepared to do that.
I understand that there were commercial divers present, but the traversing into the horizontal portion of the line, I don't know if there were any of the divers that were actually willing to go down. When we had no time after the first dive where they reach up to 10 feet, at no time after that did any of the divers come with any plan, or we were not able to get any plan from them to go into the horizontal portion of the line.
Right, okay. So you knew that someone had been into the pipe and had gone a few feet into the horizontal?
Yes, yes.
And it come out.
I think we might have heard about that night, I'm not so sure. But we know that they dived into the line.
Yes, all right. Well, you say you might not have known that at the time.
I'm not so sure about the horizontal portion. I'm not certain. That came out afterwards.
And is it then your evidence that you didn't know at that time when this equipment had arrived that there were divers available and willing to go into the pipe, into the horizontal?
Into the horizontal part.
What, only just down to the end?
I think that they would have been willing to go down to the end. I think that was safe enough. I think they believed that was safe enough. But to start traversing the horizontal portion, it seemed to me that none were willing to come forward with that.
Where did you get this from?
Well, it was from the feedback from Catherine, I should say, that none of the divers that there was no plan.
Yeah, that's a slightly different thing, isn't it? Because I've recognised in the inquiry that we've had so far and the evidence given that there was a need, certainly as expressed by some, for a formal or informal dive plan, right?
Informal would be fine for me.
But in any event, a dive plan. And
Yeah.
you're saying that you had no such dive plan ever advanced to you.
Correct.
Did you ever seek to try and obtain one through Miss Balkissoon and the divers who were there?
No. I cannot say that we actively went and asked them for a dive plan.
Why not?
When LMCS, when the incident occurred, the automatic trigger was for LMCS to initiate our emergency response. That was accepted. That is what Kazem was doing, or leading.
But you stopped them from diving in the pipe.
We arranged for as much resources as possible to facilitate their diving. And when, after that first dive by Michael Kurban, there was no effort coming forward at that point in time.
Well, pausing there, did you have a dive plan for Mr. Kurban to go into the pipe?
No.
Right. So what was different between Mr. Kurban going into the pipe and somebody else going into the pipe a little bit later on, once all the commercial equipment was on site?
We did not know that Kurban had gone into the pipe
Until after he'd done it.
until after he had done it.
But had come out.
Sorry?
But he had come out.
That's right, and he had only traversed 10 feet. This now was an effort to go further than 10 feet.
Oh, yeah,
Probably much further, maybe 50, maybe 100.
maybe more.
Yeah. And the thought about going further in, well, I don't know what the divers were thinking. What I do know is that none came forward to say, I am going to dive. At least that is the evidence we have.
None came forward to say they were willing to dive.
That's right. We
That's
did
really
try.
the case, is it? That's really the position. No one said, I am willing to dive in that pipe.
That is correct.
including Mr. Kerban, including Mr. Farah, including Mr. Beddoe and his brother, none of those people said, I am willing to dive in that pipe.
On that night, as far as we're aware, yes.
Thank you, that's your evidence.
But you agreed, you told us that Catherine Balkisoon told the IMT, she was a representative of IMT,
Yes.
that LMCS had divers who were willing to do a rescue.
Yes, yes, I have to say yes to that, that they
Yes.
were saying that they want to do a
Rescue.
They have divers.
Right.
And
If it is that you or the IMT wanted to find out whether those divers were prepared to go into, or wanted to make sure they were prepared to go into the horizontal section of the pipe, the IMT could have asked them.
well, that's the thing. The IMT attempted to deal. Yes, we could have asked them. IMT.
And you had Catherine Balkisoon on the site.
Yes,
And I want to read to you what Catherine Balkisoon said in evidence here,
certainly.
so I could get your comment about it, okay? Catherine Balkisoon, transcript of the evidence on the 14th of December 2022, on page 66, lines 8 to 24. It's on the screen for you. And according to the question, and according to my instructions, they made several requests of that, and they were told to stand down several times. Answer: at the very start, around 7, right, they asked to dive. That would have been around 7. And then sometime after that, and that would have been after they got when I saw the people where the air commercial people came, yes. Andrew Farah asked, right, and I told him, stand down. I'm not in charge. Let me talk to Colin Piper about it. So definition of several, it's not like. It was like, you know that. Are we there yet? Movie. It was like, are you there yet? Are you there yet? That every minute asking. He wasn't asking me like that. If that's what you mean by several, I don't know. He did ask me more than once. So she was saying to us in evidence that the divers there were prepared to go into the pipe, wanted to go in. She communicated it to the ICT, and they were told to stand down. Were you aware of that?
Not to that detail, but I could tell you what, not to that detail.
But you would agree with me that the IMT did not have any discussions with the divers who were prepared to go into the pipe with all the commercial equipment they have, to ask them or to point out to them or to find out whether they would want to go into the horizontal section, if they had any objection of going into the horizontal section.
Yeah, I don't know if they had any, I don't know if they were prepared to go into the horizontal section.
You don't know.
The IMT sought to deal with LMCS representative, not freelance divers, at the first instance, and that would have been Andrew Farah or Kazem Ali. There must be at least one leader for us to have been able to lead with. Even if Conan Beddoe had stepped forward to be the leader of that team, we would have been able to meet with him and to say, look, let's work this out. Let's have a dynamic risk assessment on this thing now. But it did not happen.
Mr. Ashwell, before I go into the evidence, because I want to go this as the last part of my cross-examination to you, as to, I want to just put what I'm going to put to you and ask you to answer me in respect of some of the things that the IMT did.
Okay.
As their form of rescuing, right?
Yes.
But you would agree with me that these 4 men who were in the pipe after Budram came out, you or the IMT would have recognized that any rescue to get them out alive had to be within a short space of time.
As the planning section chief, I really did not attach time frame on it.
So you did not, what you said as a
Planning section chief.
as a planning section chief, you did not attach any time frame. So as far as you were concerned, it could have taken 12 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours. It didn't matter.
I attached no time frame to it,
No
Mr.
time
Marriage,
frame.
yeah.
So you did not think that this was urgent to get a rescue done from the pipeline?
By not touching a time frame, I don't think that means that it's not urgent. It was very urgent and very critical.
But if it was very urgent and very critical, would you want to take 6 hours to do it, 10 hours to do it, 12 hours to do it, or try to do it in 3 hours?
Immediately.
Immediately. So therefore, if any rescue of the men from the pipeline, and if PARIA wanted to have a rescue done, a decision had to be made urgently.
Definitely.
Right. And therefore, if these men who were prepared to go into the pipeline, at the time at around 7 o'clock, from what we just talked about, would you not agree that PARIA should have tried to see whether that rescue should have been effected?
From the information that we have, there was no safe dive to be able to take place at that time.
And there was no safe dive as PARIA was concerned because they wanted to see the conditions in the pipeline.
That, you mean with respect to the crawler?
Well, with respect to everything that they wanted to see.
Well, we got the crawler to be able to find out, to try to find out where the men were. That was the main objective as far as I am aware of for the crawler.
But you knew the men were in the pipeline.
To know where along the pipeline they were. Sorry, I didn't make myself clear. By sending the crawler down, if we be able to pinpoint whether they are 100, 200, or 300 feet, it would have been able to give us more information.
Okay, so the reason for the crawler and the reason for getting all this video footage was merely to find out how far in the horizontal section the men were.
Not merely. It was to try to find out where the men were.
Okay. Well, let me just point out to you what PARIA did, because PARIA is relying upon this timeline to do a rescue. And I want to put it to you as a representative of the IMT.
Yeah, what timeline is that?
Yeah, I'll go through it.
Oh, sorry.
Mitchell was contacted at 4:30 p.m. on the 25th of February 2022, and they were told to be on standby by PARIA from 8:40 p.m. with surface supply equipment. And that is to be found at paragraphs 4 and 5 of Fitzroy King's witness statement, supplemental witness bundle, page 3017. I wonder if we could put that up on the screen for the witness to see. You see that?
Yes.
Right. Then could you put paragraph 7 on the screen for him at page 3017? Based on Fitzroy King's statements, they were on standby and not given any further information until just after 1 a.m. on Saturday, when he, Rolseys, requested him to view the video footage of the pipeline. Mr. King assessed that his divers were too big to fit into the pipeline. So that is from 4:30 p.m., 8:40 p.m., standby, and then at 1 a.m. on Saturday morning. You see that?
Yes.
Right. Let's go to Eastern Engineering responses. Eastern Emergency Responses Services were not contacted until 11:40 p.m. on Friday. See paragraph 6
They were not contacted until 11:40.
11:40. 11:40 p.m. on Friday. See paragraph 6 of Andy Johnson, Witness Bundle, Volume 4, page 1526. And also paragraph 11. The first part of the team arrived on site at 12:30 a.m. on Saturday. They were briefed at 1:25 a.m. by the incident commander, that's at paragraph 11. The incident commander advised Mr. Johnson that due to the variables around the incident, Eastern should prepare themselves for a retrieval and not a rescue due to the possibility that the divers may have expired, paragraph 11, page 1527. After viewing the video footage of the pipeline and visiting Bird 6, Eastern at 3:45 a.m. informed the ICT that they could not perform a rescue because the pipeline was filled with water and that the rescue required a diving team, paragraph 19, page 1529. And then at 5 a.m., Eastern was placed on standby, and at 7 p.m., that is on Saturday, they were called off their assignment by the IMT, paragraph 21. See that?
Yes.
OTSL. OTSL was contacted in the afternoon of Friday, the 25th of February. Look at paragraphs 6 and 8 of Ian Bertrand's witness statement at Supplemental Witness Bundle, page 2842. On the afternoon of Friday, the 25th of February, 2022, and they arrived on site at 8:10 p.m. and remained on standby until 5:30 a.m. The evidence is that they were not called upon by PARIA to do anything.
Remained on standby until when?
They remained on standby until 5:30 a.m.
5:30 a.m.
a.m.
And were stood down when?
And they were stood down, well, they arrived at the site at 8:10 p.m. At Friday evening and remained on standby until 5:30 p.m. On 5:30 a.m. on Saturday morning.
Right.
And the evidence is that they were not called upon by PARIA to do anything.
Thank you.
And that is paragraph 6 and 8 of Ian Bertrand's witness statement, SWB 2842.
Thank you.
Then Hull Support Services. That is at SWB 2990 and 2991. That's Andy, it's Gayasi Woodley witness statement. And he said he received a call at 4:30 p.m. from Andy Fortune, and he told Andy that he would try to put a crew together. Hull did not go to the site as it could not put a crew together. So that is Hull. According to Michael Way, at paragraph 103, at page 1289, volume 4 of the witness statement bundle, a request was made for a camera by PARIA at 6:30 p.m. at 6:10 p.m. on Friday. It arrived at 7:30 p.m. but could not be used as the light was insufficient. Further, let me give you at paragraph 105 of Mr. Way's witness statement at page 1290, volume 4 of the witness statement bundle. He said, further at around 9 p.m., a pushrod camera from Atlantic LNG arrived on site at 9 p.m., that is on the Friday, and around midnight, that Atlantic LNG camera was used to perform an inspection, but could not go past the scuba tank in the pipeline. Hummingbird was contacted at 10:50 p.m. See paragraph 107 of Michael Y's witness statement at page 1290, 107. It was contacted at 10:50 p.m. on Friday by Mr. Michael Y to make arrangements for a crawler with camera. You see that?
Yes, yes, sir.
And Catherine Balkisoon said at paragraph 31 of a witness statement, witness bundle, at page 1333, that the pipeline crawler went in at 3 a.m. on Saturday. They were still trying to retrieve footage from that camera by 4 a.m. See paragraph 79 of the statement of Mustaq Mohammed, page 1457, volume 4 of the witness statement bundle. So you see, Mr. Archibald, that although PARIA knew that there were divers since 7 o'clock on Friday evening, prepared to go into the pipeline, PARIA was engaged in these activities that I pointed out to you without even talking to the divers who were willing to go, or making representations to them.
I've heard what you read, and if I could share what I know.
But do you find that satisfactory?
I've heard what you read.
As an IMT person.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I have to. Mr. Mirage read a lot. Mr. Mirage read a lot. And the witness is saying, I heard what you read, but I want to tell you what I know. Because if it's the invitation to the witnesses to accept or dispute any of all of that, it has to be done seriatim.
No, of course. Yeah. I mean, I agree. Let's take it one step at a time. I think what Mr. Maharaj was doing is to set the scene so that we understand the purpose of the question. And I have no difficulty with that. You understand what has happened. He's read to you what the evidence that has been placed before this inquiry has been. All right? It's not all of the evidence, obviously, and there's some evidence that potentially contradicts it. All right? So, but this is the evidence that has been led before this inquiry, either in writing or by live evidence.
Well, it's bits and pieces of evidence.
No, of course it is. It's a selection. We're not going through the whole of the evidence for you to consider that. That's my job, all right? But you've been given a picture of the activities in terms of finding people who were prepared to do something, if anything, to rescue these divers by the IMT, all right? He's given you a picture. I accept it's a snapshot, but it's a picture, all right? First of all, you said in answer to that, first of all, that you hear what he says, or you hear what has been read to you. Do you dispute any of what has been read to you? I mean, are you able to say whether it is accurate or not? If you can't, then fine.
But he read a lot.
Of course he did, yes.
And it's rather difficult for me to say that I dispute with each one now, not having been able to comment on each one.
Let's proceed on this basis then, shall we? Let's assume for a moment that it is accurate. What is read to you is accurate recounting of the evidence. Doesn't mean to say we're necessarily going to accept it. Do you follow that? But it's an accurate recount of some of the evidence. Let's assume that for the moment, all right? If that is true, if it's true, does it represent to you what Mr. Maharaj has asked as a satisfactory approach to the rescue of these men?
It's a difficult question to answer because the bits and pieces that he read is not necessarily the facts that I have.
You mean you may not accept them as being accurate?
That's right.
Right, all right. Let us assume they're not accurate.
Yes.
Do you think that the efforts made to rescue these men by way of contacting different agencies were satisfactory?
The outcome was that
No,
there
not
was
the
no
outcome.
rescue. So
Not the outcome. Do you think that
The
the
efforts were
made
satisfactory?
satisfactory?
I think yes, because we did all that we could have done, I think. I don't think there was anything that we could have done that we did not do.
All right. Well, that will be for us to determine. But I think the concern from Mr. Maharaj, and to be frank, for me, is answer to a question you made earlier, and it's against that background I suspect that these questions have been asked of you, which is, was there any kind of time frame or timeline that was applied by the IMT, given that you accept that it was very urgent and very critical and needed to be done immediately? You follow the point, don't you, that if you're contacting, just take one of them, you're contacting somebody saying we need help here, and you do that at 5:30, all right? And they tell you they can arrive by 8:10, and then they are on standby until 5:30 in the morning and not being called upon to do anything. That is OTSL, if that is right. It doesn't really bespeak of a particularly well thought out plan by the IMT as to how they should progress, given that it was very urgent, very critical, and should be acted upon immediately.
Well, if it were right,
Yes,
but
if
I
it's
don't
right.
believe that that is what occurred.
You think it's wrong?
Yes.
Right. You think that they were contacted before 5:30?
No, I think the time that they were contacted is correct.
Right. They
But what
arrived at 8:10.
I believe that is also correct.
Right. But you say they were called upon to provide some assistance.
Yes.
Right. All right, well, let's assume that that is correct. At 8:10, when they arrived on the scene, well, now go back at one step. If at 5:30 they're saying they can't get there for the better part of 3 hours, did you think that that represented to you what was either very urgent or very critical? They can't even get there for the best part of 3 hours.
I believe that was the best they could have done.
No, I believe that too. But is it good enough for you?
Well, it certainly was not good enough for the rescue.
No.
But there was nothing else. This is the Friday afternoon, evening.
Yes.
And you're calling upon persons to mobilize. Mobilization doesn't take an instant. You're calling people out from their homes, possibly, and they have to report to work and then...
No, I understand it might take, believe me, I've been stuck in the traffic here just like everybody else. But I understand how it works. The point about it is this, is that if you had a timeline, right, you know the incident happened at around 2:30, that they disappeared, 2:30, 2:45, call it 2:45, all right? They disappeared, 2:45. 2.5 hours later, approximately, somebody comes out of the pipeline, alive. So at 5:30 or so that evening, you know for sure that there are people alive in the pipe.
We believe that.
Yes, exactly. There must have been in your mind a critical timeline upon which to work. Because at 5:30 you say, well, if we can get a team in there now, we might save 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of them. If we wait an hour, it's going to take, we may lose 1. If it takes 3 hours, we may lose 2. If it takes 5 hours, we may lose them all. Did you not work to some kind of timeline?
No, I think I understand the question, but I don't agree with the basis.
Right. That you'll need to explain.
If you call upon someone for help, and you want the help now, and they say, I can make it there in an hour or 2 or 3, do you tell them, no, I don't need you anymore? No, we did not do that. We called upon them for help, and they came. And then we called upon another team for help, and then another team, because we did not assume that one would be good enough. We called upon everyone that we were able to get in contact with. So we turned away no one because they were not able to reach immediately. they all understood the urgency of why they were coming. And I believe that they came as quickly as they could have come.
I believe that too.
Whether that was good enough, I mean, we know the result, we know the outcome. But whether they could have done better, I don't know.
No, it's not about whether they could have done better, it's whether you could have done better. You, the IMT, I don't mean you personally, although that may be an issue too, but the fact is that if you call someone and they say, look, it's going to take us 3 hours to get there, there must be another plan. All right, you say, then you call someone else and get them to come there, and another, and another.
But we didn't tell them not to come.
No, I appreciate that. There's no point in telling them not to come.
Thank you.
But, and I get all of that. The point is, though, is if the first arrival of anyone to give you any help is hours away, is there not a plan B? Is there not some other alternative?
LMCS was affecting the first plan, which is to put together a rescue team,
Right.
which we were helping with.
Well, you say you were helping with, as I understand it, what was happening is that you provided them with a few tanks of air when they said they needed some more. But apart from that, you were prohibiting them from going into the pipe. Weren't you?
The help that we provided to them was to get their divers down, to get air for them, and well, they got their own vessel.
Yeah,
And
the help
very
that you
next-
provided, the help that you provided, LMCS, as I understand it, correct me if I've got it wrong, but it's that when they said they ran out of air, you provided them with some more air tanks.
Yes,
At the same time, you were saying don't dive.
correct.
Right. So what I want to understand from you is this, is that you knew pretty early on that the best that you were likely to achieve was it was going to take hours for any of the people you were calling to turn up and be able to help you. That was the position, was it not?
Yes, but I have to, the questions caused me to have to ask this. What was the alternative?
The alternative was to have a plan B, which, bold as I might be to make a suggestion as to what it might be, is to go to LMCS and say, or go on the barge, the berth, and or speak to them directly, not through Miss Balkissoon, if that wasn't working. I mean, you knew, according to you, that the equipment had arrived. You knew that there were people who were still in the pipe, almost certainly alive, and you knew that there were divers who were available and willing. I mean, is it beyond the wit of man to be able to put together a plan yourself?
No, we could have.
Well,
But
why
we did
didn't you? I
not-
mean, you came up in your own statement, which you dated the 16th of August of 2022, with what you regarded as the minimum requirements to be safe. It didn't involve selling in a camera. It involved making sure that the person who was going to go into the pipe was as safe as he could be, didn't it?
That's right.
And you had that.
And after 7 o'clock, there was, as far as we know, as far as I believe, there was no one willing to traverse the horizontal part of the line.
Do you think you might be wrong about that?
It is possible.
Right. And if you are wrong about it, then somewhere along the line there was a failure in communication of that, wasn't there? If
Yes,
you're wrong.
yes.
So if there were willing people, if that's our finding in due course, that there were 1, 2, 3 or 4 divers who both had the ability and the willingness to do it, you say, you at the IMT did not know that.
Right. So
Is that the
I
position?
agree.
Yeah, all right. And if that is so, there was a failure in communication, was there not?
Definitely.
Right.
But the willingness,
The consequences of which may be death.
it may, but the willingness would not have effected a rescue. The willingness would not have effected a rescue.
Well, you needed someone who was prepared to do it.
I still, if it is, we could ask those same people who we think were willing and sit together with them and develop a plan now, even now, after this incident, and see what it actually entails to go down into the 30-inch line, traverse horizontally, and to remove the bottles, and then to come back up, then to go back again.
Why did the bottles need removing?
to be able to get to the first man.
Why? 30-inch pipe couldn't go past me and a bottle?
Well, if in my, and I'm not a diver and I'm not a rescue diver.
I'm neither of those. I dive a bit, but I'm not a rescue
But
diver.
if the rescue diver is going down, he would have on his helmet the umbilical. He would need to have an extra bottle for the person and a tether.
It's a smaller bottle, you know that, don't you?
Yeah, well, and he should probably go with a BCD, the vest, so that way the man would not have to swim or be pulled up to the surface. That what I think might have been the better thing. So that would have used that to rise vertically rather than to have to pull, because to set up a pulley at the top of the riser would have been almost impossible.
All right, well, let's not muse too much at this juncture, because I'm not sure that's going to achieve very much.
But
that musing that you're doing now is something that might have been done then.
We did it then.
I rather got the impression from your statement that you had identified the things that you thought were necessary in order to effect a safe rescue.
We did that then, and we worked. But there was the willingness from the LMCS supporters was not enough to effect a rescue. Right. It might have been enough to dive, but not to effect a rescue.
I'm not sure I understand that. But,
diving does not.
As I understand it, again, if I've got this wrong, Mr. Archibald, please tell me. You say the only impediment, ultimately, at around 7:15, 7:30, when the commercial equipment arrived, the only impediment to a rescue at that stage was the fact that there was no one communicated to you willing to go into the horizontal part of the pipe. Have I got that right?
And that is the main impediment.
Right, okay. The main impediment.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Just before we move on, Mr. Maraj, I heard you just mention that it was a possibility, or even if now we were to sit with the willing personnel, right? I think what has already been established for me by PARIA is that the ICT members are ICS trained. And you as the head, are you aware of a unified command under ICT or IMT philosophy?
Yes, the ICS teaches about unified command
right,
approach.
so
yes.
A unified command would dictate very much what you said. So even engage any specialists and or your outsource stakeholders, under that philosophy, you could have engaged all your specialists, whether using technology, teleconference and stuff, to start enacting components into your tactical plan as early as when you started engaging the first specialists.
Right, so the specialists that we contacted were on site, and when they came on site, we engaged them at that point. The unified command, it did not include an LMCS representative, which is what the commissioner is saying.
No, not necessarily. So I'm even removing you from, any having to think about diving or confined space rescue. I'm dealing with your expertise or competence in ICS.
Yes.
And since you're familiar with a unified command, there are multiple agencies that you engage, not concerned with the time that they showed up.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to interrogate the philosophy or your understanding of the unified command philosophy, because it speaks to a quality timeline that you could have gotten quality information and or started developing components into tactical plan.
Okay, so
under the unified command.
Right.
So the unified command won't only pertain to LMCS as your first responder, because you've engaged ROV SEALs, you've engaged other
Right.
members. So even though if they were scattered across the country. And I do appreciate February 25th, that was a Carnival Friday.
Yes.
You know, so I think if you have a good understanding and a good command of the Unified Command philosophy, I'm a bit challenged in terms of what I'm hearing. It seems as though your outside stakeholders were engaged in silos and not necessarily under the Unified Command philosophy.
I'm not sure which agency should have been in Unified Command that was not there. Yes, there may have been others, but and if you consider the planning P, which is the initial response and then the generation of the ICS 2-1, the incident briefing, and the formation of the incident command / unified command, right? Unified command for larger incidents. And before you get into the cycle, that at that point in time, we actually did have TTCG, TTFS, Trans-Tobago Police Service. We did not have the dive companies as yet. They didn't arrive until about 8 o'clock. And I think what you're saying is that we could have been online with them in order to be able to start soliciting information. Yes. We were not necessarily online over the phone with them, explaining what the situation was. I think the only person that actually responded affirmatively or in any definite way what their position was Hull. The other three needed to be on site to be able to assess before they could have made a pronouncement. So the creation of the Unified Command, you could say it was started, but the first tactical plan did not take place until after the first site visits were done.
But now I'm going to have to test the site visit because there's nothing that came out to me, you know, what the diving companies did in
That's right.
As a
that is absolutely correct, yes.
So, but also under the ICS system, I mean, again, the thing about it is command and control and over-exaggerate.
Yes.
So I understand Coast Guard showed up. Coast Guard immediately almost said, look, we're not going into the pipeline. So I'm not hearing powerfully that a unified command operated as advertised under the ICS system.
No, I would agree.
Okay.
That it did not operate as advertised in the ICS system. And that is actually one of our findings.
Okay, so then really,
Yeah.
Okay, so there are gaps in terms
Definitely.
of the timeline.
That's right.
Okay.
And the recommendation is to do training with the, joint training with the regulators and the persons in rescue and that kind of thing.
Understood. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, just by housekeeping, are we likely to get to Mr. Osei Fleming Holer? I see it's 5 to 4. And,
we have to rise at 5:30 at the very latest.
yeah, that's what I was
Yes.
advised. So at least we could keep Mr. Seals and Mr. Fuentes at least, so that we don't lose time.
No, quite.
I can't see us getting to Mr. Osei.
Well, what I would like to do, can you just give me a moment?
Sure.
Ronnie. It seems to me that how much longer do you have, do you think? Right. All right, well, ask that question, and I'll deal with with where we are going to with the rest of the witnesses. Go on.
Mr. Ashwell, I have a duty to put something to you. You're aware that OSHA conducted an investigation into this matter,
Yes.
and you're aware that you were interviewed by OSHA,
Yes, sir.
and you're aware that OSHA made certain findings,
Yes.
well, actually, preliminary findings.
Yes, I understand.
And at page, and I want to ask you your view on it so that you'll get an opportunity.
Okay.
At page 1239 and the core bundle volume 3, under the heading 6.24, and what I'll do, it's on the screen. You can
Yes.
read it, but I'll just want to put it to you and then ask you 2 questions on it, okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, OSHA stated that you had no experience in offshore subsea maintenance works.
Yes.
Do you agree with that or not?
Whether I have no experience or that I told them that.
Well, did you tell them that?
I don't remember saying that to them.
You don't remember saying that to them?
But it's something that I might have said, but I really don't
Something you
remember.
might have said.
I asked them to be able to tape the conversation, and they said no.
So you agree with them then that you have no experience in offshore subsea?
Well, I have
maintenance?
never done diving or any sort of maintenance work.
Okay. Offshore maintenance?
Offshore, yeah. I have never done any of that.
Right.
So if that is what was meant here, then I don't have competency, qualifications or training in doing any sort of offshore work.
Great, okay. I thought I had a duty to ask you that.
Right.
And it went on to say that he admitted that his team does not have the required competency in offshore subsea maintenance work.
Well, I don't know what the word required there, but my team does not do offshore maintenance work. We are HSE. We are HSE professionals, so we don't do the work. We understand the risks associated with the work for the oil and gas industry.
You do not understand the risk associated?
We understand the risks associated for the oil, as far as the oil and gas industry pertains, but actually the doing of the work, no, that is not our area of expertise at all.
So you understand the risks in this job that was being done?
Well, as far as it pertains to the oil and gas industry, the diving aspect of it, the competent contractor would have brought that to us.
So you think that you were competent in PARIA to assess the method statement?
The JHA, the risk assessment?
Yes, you're
yeah.
competent.
So to assess it for as far as to include the facility risks, which is what I would have spent some time explaining earlier.
All right, Mr. Archibald, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mr. Maharaj.
All right, just wait one moment. Who wants to ask questions of Mr. Archibald? 3, and I take it you both will have something. You may not have much. Right, all right. Well, I know when you say 3, you mean 3, or maybe 3.5 at the most. All right. Realistically, I think we're going to take a 5-minute break in a moment, but I think realistically that's going to take us at least half an hour, perhaps a little more. So I'm minded to certainly to release Mr. O.C. Fleming Holder. That's his name, is it? Fleming Holder, right. Well, he should be allowed to go, I think. The question is whether I keep Mr. Seals or Mr. Fuentes or both. My inclination at the moment is to keep Mr. Seals. Fuentes? I'm being told to keep... Well, maybe we should just have Mr. Fuentes. I think he's the one we should keep, and let Mr. Seals go as well. I've got an appointment at 6 o'clock, which I have to keep, and I need to do a little bit of reading before that. So, so what I'm going to do is to keep Mr. Fuentes, ask Mr. Seals and Mr. Fleming Holder to come back tomorrow morning. I'm sorry about that, but if you ask them to come, I shall call them first. We'll have Mr. Seals first, and then Mr. Fleming Holder. All right, and then the other two that are fixed to come, Mr. Johnson from Eastern Emergency Responses and Mr. Gill from Hull Support. All right, well, that's what we'll do.
Time to be confirmed, sir, I see. Time
Sorry?
for tomorrow. You need to tell them now.
We're going to tell them now, yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to rise for 5 minutes, everyone will stretch their legs, and then we'll resume with...
The start time.
Yes, thank you very much.
The starting time. If it
Tomorrow?
For tomorrow, yes. If it's not on the schedule.
Right, oh, it isn't, is it? Yeah.
It says to be confirmed. But I think it did say 9 o'clock or 9:30 or 10 o'clock, I think.
Well, the question is this, isn't it? Do you want to go home early or start early? Why don't we start at 9:30 tomorrow? 9:30? All right, 9:30 tomorrow. Thank you very much. I'll rise for 5 minutes, all right? Just 5 minutes.
All right.
this afternoon and tomorrow morning.
No problem with that, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, I didn't ask for him to go in place of Mr. Fuentes. The request was for him to be squeezed in, but when I spoke to the secretary, I understood the position, and he has no difficulty being here for 9:30 tomorrow.
Right, but I think if he comes at 9:30 tomorrow, I can give him the reasonable assurance that, subject to hurricanes or something like that, he will be first on and be first away.
And we'll be very happy for that, because tomorrow will be the third day he'd be up here.
No, I understand that. He's
Yes.
not the only one, I'm afraid.
Yes.
It's just what happens, as you know. Yes. All right, so what we're going to do is we'll finish with Mr. Archibald, we'll hear from Mr. Fuentes, and the target time is 5:30, please. And then we will hear from Mr. Seals tomorrow morning at 9:30. Thank you very much. So let's get on. Now, who wants to ask Mr. Archibald some questions? Yes. So first of all, we'll hear from Miss Alfonso, please.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Archibald. My name is Nairi Alfonso. I represent the interests of the SWWTU. And I have very few questions for you. A lot of the stuff has been traversed already. Mr. Archibald, you would have been involved in compiling an investigative report, an incident investigation report in August of last year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And in that report, amongst other things, and that report is to be found, well, attached to Mark Rudder's witness statement at 1743 in part 3 of the witness bundle at appendix 14. So you would have come to two conclusions: that the incident, which caused the, 5 divers to be sucked into the pipeline, was caused by LMCS removing the inflatable plug. That's
Yes,
one.
yes. Maybe I could have it. Do
Sure.
I have it anywhere here?
Sure. I don't know about, I
Just
can't
a
say in front
moment.
of
You want the original document?
Yeah, well, to answer the question,
Yes,
Oh,
no,
yes,
of course.
certainly.
You should
I'm
have
not
it.
sure how many
Just a moment.
conclusions.
Where are we, Miss?
We are, the place that I found it is tab 59 in the part 3 of the witness statement bundle.
I don't remember how many conclusions, but I remember there were 2
Is it the core
recommendations.
Right, okay, just a moment.
I know it's in the core bundle, but I accessed it from the witness statement.
The original core bundle, 185, that's why I haven't got it. Right, okay. It just take a moment longer, because there's a central core bundle, and then there are the ones that we're using. So it's core bundle 1143, is it? 1185, sorry, 1185.
Oh, it had to be here. Okay, 1185. Right.
Okay, so if and because we might be looking at totally different versions, I have page 3 of 21, which I hope will be at the,
Okay, yes.
right? I would say the penultimate paragraph, if it looks the same on that document, based on the information gathered. Yes, there we are. You see that paragraph?
Yes.
But you best read it, because we haven't all got it, unless we have it on our screen, so.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, you would like me to read it, or?
Yes, or that part which you want to refer him to,
Oh, I
because
see. I
it's,
see.
unless we get our screens up, we're not going to be able to
Okay,
to read it out
I'm
for
sure,
ourselves.
I will oblige. Based on the information gathered, the incident occurred due to the LMCS employees removing the mechanical plug and attempting to remove the inflatable plug. These actions took place without the knowledge or permission of PARIA's well, T&M personnel, technical and maintenance, I suppose.
Yes.
LMCS employees did not follow the agreed work plan, failed to properly comply with the permit to work procedure, and acted outside the terms of the work permit for the task. LMCS also failed to follow the manufacturer's safety instructions for preventing movement of or for deflating the inflatable plug. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So would it be correct to say that's what you deem to be the root cause?
The root, yes. Well, direct cause.
Causes, I beg your
yeah,
pardon. Because
it's
more
really
than one.
direct, immediate or direct.
Oh, immediate, okay. I'm happy for that terminology.
Yeah.
An immediate or direct cause. And you would have gone on, and I can make it simple by just looking at in the executive summary, which is the next page on, you'd have made key findings and recommendations. So you basically reiterated what we've just read there, and you made 2 recommendations, yes?
Yes.
And that recommendation really was retraining of the contractors including, I guess, LMCS, on the permit to work.
Yes, arising directly out of the direct causes that the investigation found.
And you would have also recommended that essentially when contractors bring equipment, that they be trained in the use of their equipment.
That the employees also be trained in it, and not dependent
and you have some
on...
way of
yeah.
some evidence of that fact be produced to PARIA.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So let me ask you, having regard to your evidence this afternoon,
Yes.
do you still hold to that view, those findings and the recommendations?
Those are still the direct causes.
Okay. So you would have had access at all, Mr. Archibald, to the Incotech report?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
And I'm the most untechnical person you will ever meet, so forgive me in advance if I oversimplify. Is it that the Incotech report concludes that the removal of some of the, or removal of a good quantity of the line contents caused a gaseous accumulation in the pipeline, and then that led to the delta P?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. I'll give the but after.
And again, I say I'm the least technical person, so I would be happy for the but.
Well, the thing about it is that the PARIA investigation report only looked at the direct, immediate causes
I see.
based on the lack of information at that point in time. If you look at this report, we didn't even know if they were intentionally removing the inflatable plug, or if it slipped, or if they were fixing it and it fell. So after this inquiry, we would have a lot more information to be able to say not only what are the direct or immediate causes, but the underlying root causes as well.
Okay.
So we will be able to talk about things like delta P and the removal and suitable and sufficient risk assessments and that kind of thing.
So let me just ask you, Mr. Archibald.
Yeah.
So again, I just wanted to say, let me expand what I said earlier. With the benefit of your evidence this afternoon, with the benefit of additional information that would have come to PARIA, and I know, to be fair to you, I know this report is completed even before your witness statement. I beg your pardon, I'm wrong.
It's the
2
same
weeks
month.
after,
Yeah,
2 weeks after,
yeah.
right? But in the same month. So with the benefit of additional information, are you still of the view that these findings, these conclusions in your report are accurate, are spot on?
Well, they are the direct causes. The removal of the plug is the direct cause. If the plug had not been removed, then the event would not have occurred. So, but there are other contributory causes as well, which could be considered to be direct, I suppose, depending on the methodology that we use, which is the emptying of the line to a certain extent that would allow the plug to fall. So yeah, that would definitely be part of the contributory causes as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if I follow what Commissioner Wilson has explained previously, as well as the Inquitec report, isn't it that the line, the removal of the lack of contents in the pipe allowed for the differential to exist?
Yes.
Because there was one pressure outside. I can't tell you anything about atmospheric pressure, but there was one pressure outside, and there was one pressure inside.
Yeah, the lack of
inside the pipe, I beg your pardon.
The lack of the contents caused the sudden drop in the inflatable plug, which then, at that point in time, would have caused the rush of water to come in.
No, that's what you think, is it?
Yes.
You think that the lack of fluid in the pipe meant that once they deflated the inflatable plug, it fell.
Yes.
What, like in gravity, fell?
No, not gravity. No, not gravity.
Well, what do you mean then, fell?
The compressor was on,
Yes.
and the line was plugged,
Yes.
and there was about possibly maybe between 6 and 7 psi of pressure acting down on the face of the inflatable plug.
At the top?
At the top.
6 or 7 psi?
Yes.
On top?
Yes.
And you didn't know what was on the other side?
No. It was 6 or 7 psi in addition to what was higher than on the other side, I should say.
Right.
And then, so that was 7 psi over a surface area of pi r squared diameter, which was about 4,000 pounds
Of pressure?
of weight. 4,000 pounds
Yes.
of weight.
The equivalent of the pressure?
Yes, due to the pressure.
Correct.
So I believe when they started to slacken the plug, even if it was chained, and even if they were holding it, that 4,000 pounds would have broken whatever restraints it might have had, and it fell.
Even a substantial chain wouldn't have held it.
Yeah. And when it fell, it created what we could describe as a partial vacuum in the space above it. And that now caused the flow of water into the line.
It sucked everything the other side of it into the pipe.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. So
It's just the use of your word fall. It made me sit up for a minute.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Sucked, I think, it might be better.
Well, the plug was, maybe the better word was pushed down.
Yes, all right. Better still. Yeah.
and I've heard a lot of terminology. Vortex was created, a sudden vortex was created.
Yeah, I've seen that word being used,
Okay.
yeah.
But it was a violent action.
Yeah,
Right? It wasn't, I agree with the chairman, fall.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, the plug was forced down because of the weight, of the pressure, and the water rushed in, and because of the space, the empty space underneath, the water created a siphon with a vortex and then went in, following the plug.
Okay. So one of those root causes we can, as a takeaway, which you may not have had the benefit of in August of 2022, is that you created, I don't want to say you, the job created the environment, the way that the job was conducted, the pre-work for the job, I think that's a better word,
Yes.
created the environment for this potential hazard, which unfortunately evolved into a real hazard.
Yes. Yeah. There was a realization of the risk.
So that is something that is now in the psyche of PARIA. This is something that you are addressing in some way, following on this lawsuit.
Yes. So specifically with respect to diving work or any works related to diving, where there could be, we have built-in ways to address the risk in a different way.
And that is by seeking external diving
Yes.
expertise and so on.
Yes.
Would you agree with me, Mr. Archibald, that was also available pre-February, or to be fair to you, maybe July 2021 when the tender was being awarded? Reviewing the plans and so on that your department had to plan, that was available as well, that external assistance?
External third-party advice is always available.
Is always available.
Certainly, I mean, I could add more.
Please,
Certainly, if LMCS had sought third-party advice, they would have been able to present a suitable and sufficient risk assessment to the client, PARIA, outlining all of the risks as per the requirements of the OSHA Act, Section 13A, for the employer to provide a suitable and sufficient risk assessment.
And would you agree, Mr. Archibald, by the same token, that PARIA could have sought that
Yes.
third-party external assistance because, well, I'll let you answer that before I ask you.
Yes, PARIA could have also sought third-party
Because,
review.
because you have admitted you didn't have that expertise internally
Correct.
in your department.
That is
I want to
right.
give you you
Yes.
have one department. So if you got a method statement, a risk analysis, and so on, you didn't have the expertise internally to interrogate it, to review it, to analyze it.
The diving aspects of the job, correct.
Good. But this job had a diving
Yes,
component.
yes.
Yes? So, okay, thank you for that, Mr. Archibald.
Can I ask you in that regard, please? There's no national standard applied in Trinidad and Tobago for diving in this way, commercial diving of this kind, is there?
No, not that I'm aware of.
OSHA haven't introduced any regulation in relation to diving
Not as yet.
commercially in this country, have
No.
they? No. There was nothing, of course, to stop PARIA having their own diving regulations,
No, there was nothing to have stopped.
which could have been adopted from, say, Canada or the United Kingdom or wherever else this sort of work. I mean, I picked those because they both have
That is
oil
correct.
and
Yes.
gas-producing operations, or from other parts of the world. Could have been relatively easy, couldn't it, for PARIA to themselves have said, you know what, there may not be any regulation or law here, but in order to ensure the safety of those who are carrying out this hazardous work, we will impose our own system. You never did
Definitely,
that,
that's correct.
and you still haven't done that.
We haven't adopted a specific standard. What we have done is introduce third-party verification who use standards of international standards to be able to measure the contracts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Mr. Archibald, I want to carry you to paragraph 50 of your witness statement. That is on page 1322. You have it before you?
I will. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Now, my learned senior, Mr. Maharaj, would have carried you through certain timelines, which I won't do, and also detail certain companies who were present at one point in time or the other. Could you identify, are you able to say that Hull Services was asked to dive or OTSL was asked to dive and they refused?
Yes. Well, as far as I know, we asked them to be able to do a rescue. And they considered it, they assessed, and they advised subsequently that the risk was too high for them to be able to initiate a rescue.
When?
Sorry?
When? When did you ask them?
from the time that we called them, we explained the situation to them, and I think you might have read the timeline, the times before. And when they came on site, they did the assessment, and I'm not sure exactly at what time they would have arrived. I know Mitchell and OTSL came at around 8, between 8 and 8:30.
OTSL arrived 10 past 8.
Yes.
Did you ask them then?
I'm not sure if we asked them before or at that point in time, but we would have asked them at some point in time that we want to be able to rescue.
No. It's a different question from the one Ms. Alfonso was asking you. She was asking you, in relation to these companies, whether or not they were divers who were prepared to go into the pipe. Were they prepared to carry out such a rescue?
Within the dive crew?
Yes. No, the crew that they would bring, whoever they were.
Or if there were any divers.
Yes. Were they prepared? Did you ask them if they were prepared to carry out a rescue? You said that they refused in the statement that you made. I was informed that Hull Services and 2 other diving establishments which PARIA made contact for the purpose of assisting reference advised that they would not be able to dive into the pipeline. I'm asking you when. When was it that they were asked to provide that, to dive into the pipeline? When?
Commissioner, I don't know the exact time. That would be in the statements of the persons who would have asked them.
Do you accept, let me ask it this way, the closer to the time when there was a greater likelihood of the men being alive in the pipe might encourage people to carry out a rescue. The later the time that men were in that pipe might discourage people to carry out a rescue. Because when you know they might be alive, it might be worth taking the risk. When you know that there is a real likelihood that they're already dead, it is less likely you take that risk. Do you accept that as a proposition?
I accept that.
Right. So if the later that these people were asked to dive into the pipeline, the less likely they were to entertain that risk. Do you accept that?
I accept that, but I don't think that, at least for me, that I really can't speak for the dive teams, but I did not.
No, I'm not asking you to.
I did not think that within the first 24 hours was unreasonable.
Within the first 24 hours, you really thought that there was a prospect that these men would still be alive in a pipe filled, apparently filled with fluid, at least most part,
we
with
were
fluid.
continuing with rescue efforts until Saturday evening. We were still continuing with rescue efforts.
No, the fact that you were still, or saying you were still conducting them, is one thing. I'm interested to know whether or not, and you seem to accept my propositions about the risk involved. It followed. It is the case, isn't it, that it was always going to be a risk. There was no 100% guaranteed safe way in which to extract these men from the pipe.
No, there was not.
There never was going to be, was there?
Yes.
So it was always going to have a risk.
Yes, it's always a risk-based approach.
Of course.
Yeah.
If you're the man going into the pipe, you would want to know what is the likelihood of them still being alive before I risk my own life.
Yes, and to say it a different way, I would only go into the pipe, not me, but the rescuer, if someone is alive.
If there was a reasonable prospect
Yes.
of them being alive. You might never be sure that they're alive, but if there was a reasonable prospect,
Yes.
then you might be more willing to go in, mightn't you?
Definitely.
So in the immediate aftermath of Mr. Boudram coming out, or within the hour of him coming out, you might be more inclined to go in.
Definitely.
As each hour passes, the likelihood of your being willing to do that, it is reduced, isn't it? Lessened.
I suppose some people would think like that.
Well, wouldn't you?
Well, with each hour, maybe with each day, you might think like that, but not with each hour.
With each, these are men reliant on air. Did you know how much air was in the pipe?
No.
Did you know how much fluid was in the pipe?
I believe that it was almost filled, except for a couple of few air
So
pockets.
how did you think these men were going to survive for days? How did you think they were going to live?
Well, not days. I said that maybe 24 was not
all right,
unreasonable.
A day.
Yeah.
How long do you think a diver has in with one tank?
Not tanks, air pocket.
No, with one tank, how long do you think a diver has?
It depends on how much the tank is able to hold. Maybe
No,
an
let's
hour,
hold it,
2
say-
hours. I don't know.
A normal dive tank. Did you ask anybody how long has a man got, a diver, an experienced diver, how long has he got with one tank at 70 feet?
1 hour.
Good. So that was an estimate. Best, an hour. All right? Did you have any idea how many tanks might have been in that pipe?
Yes, we initially there was supposed to have been 5.
Right. So 5 hours for one man.
For one man.
If you had all the tanks.
Yes.
Right. So you had 5 men in that pipe.
Yes.
Right. And the first man didn't come out for 2.5 hours. So you knew he'd used some air, did you? From tanks?
Yes.
Right. So you had no idea how much air was in the pipe, but you just told me that you believed the pipe to be largely full.
Yes.
Right? Correct?
Correct.
Right. And insofar as there was any space in the pipe at one point in time, it sucked in, on any view, a very substantial amount of water.
We know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
We know that as a fact, don't
Yes.
we? So start from this premise, would you please? You know how long that pipe is. You know the topography, the layout of that pipe, how much area there is inside the pipe.
Yes.
Right. You know how much, it was supposed to be originally completely flooded with oil, wasn't it?
Yes.
You know how much you pumped out of it. You should do.
Well, I
Well,
don't
that
know
is-
how much was pumped.
No, apparently neither does anybody. But let's assume that you should have known how much was pumped out of it, because you have a measure of control over that, because you were the ones pumping it, right?
I think it was LMCS that was emptying the line, air blowing.
They were air blowing, but it was going into your tanks and your boats.
Yes, yes,
Right,
yes.
so
It was going into. We were receiving the
You
product.
were receiving the product,
Yes.
and you were able to measure what that product was.
We had the capacity to be able to measure what went into the
Well,
tank.
we've looked at quite a lot of charts to do with the capacity, right? So you should have been able to work out how much had been taken out of the pipeline.
I can't answer that.
Why not?
I don't know if I could have done it. Maybe.
No, I'm not asking you personally to do it. I don't know whether you're a mathematician any more than you are a diver, but somebody could, couldn't they? Once you know what's in the pipe, which is particularly, it is a piece of pipe, which is 30 inches in diameter. It's a pretty easy calculation to work out what the volume of the pipe is. Yes?
Once you know where it's going, yes, you would. You
Forget where it's
should be
going.
able to.
You know how long the pipe is. You know how much it goes along the vertical and the horizontal. So you have a complete length. It's supposed to be completely flooded with oil. You pump a certain amount out. That leaves a capacity, a gap within that pipe, doesn't it? Once you pump that amount out.
Yes.
Right, okay. So you should be able to work out how much have been taken out and therefore how much is left in there.
It is very possible that you would be able to do it.
You know, what you don't know is how much water it sucked in.
Correct.
What you don't know is the extent to which there was any air pockets before the delta P occurred.
Correct.
But you are in a position to be able to say the maximum that it was likely to be was going to be X, and the minimum was going to be Y.
Of air?
Yes.
I don't know that.
You don't know that?
No,
right.
I really.
Let's say I'm wrong, right? It's not possible to work that out at all. On any view, it was going to be relatively small air pockets. Do you agree?
I cannot agree to that either.
Why?
I don't know the shape of the line. I don't know how much air went in.
You don't know the shape of the line? You're PARIA. You should.
I don't know how much air went in.
How much air went in?
That's right.
Well, should have any air gone in?
Well, we could possibly have worked out how much air was in the chamber, but we don't know how much air was in the line, and I'm assuming that's what you mean, that is the total quantity of
Exactly.
air.
You're sucking in everything that was in that chamber, all the tools, all the bits and pieces, the air, and then the water,
Right.
and the men, all get sucked into this pipe. The pipe was supposed to be flooded. It clearly wasn't. But what I'm saying is this, is that even if you're not able to give an accurate picture of the amount of air pockets that there might have been, you could have estimated it from what information you did have. That would have provided you, can I suggest, with a timeline, a potential for how long these men could survive in the pipe.
Okay, but that was not done.
No, I appreciate it wasn't done. My question is, why wasn't it done?
Okay, I cannot answer that.
Right, well, you might want to think about that for the future, but it does seem to me that you're talking about a 24-hour window for these men to be alive is just a guess, a wild guess.
Okay.
Isn't it?
Well, for me, the incident command was on rescue mode.
I'm not interested in that. I'm asking you this question. The idea that these men could survive in that pipe, even after Mr. Boudram came out, and there were 4 more left, might survive for 24 hours, was unrealistic, wasn't it?
It might be unrealistic to other people, but I did not make that determination in my mind.
Why not?
Because I continued to believe for them to be alive.
No, you continued to hope,
Thank you.
didn't you?
I continued. If you want me to say hope, I will say hope.
Well, it is a hope because it was a hope against the facts, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The facts were that these men were sucked into a pipe that was filled with oil and then water. Right? And the idea that you had no timeline to work towards other than 24 hours completely ignores the facts as they were known to you.
The incident command system is command and control.
Yeah, I know.
This is the objective, and this is what I believed, and I continue to work.
As each hour passes, and I simply don't accept your days scenario. As each hour passes, the likelihood of these men being alive lessened. Do we agree?
That is for sure.
Right. And there had to be some sort of maximum period that could be realistically considered.
That was not calculated.
No, I appreciate it wasn't. Nobody seemingly made that calculation. And that is what, can I suggest, is what failed in the IMT, because you were not able to measure the decisions being made against a timeline as to the likelihood of them still being alive. So it doesn't become as any surprise to me that there were divers who were not prepared to go in the pipe after 5, 6, 7 hours of Mr. Boudram coming out, because the likelihood, from their point of view, as the experts, was they're likely to be dead, and I'm not risking my life to save a dead body.
Well, if that is what they said, well, then I wouldn't argue with that.
No. But you had a window. You had a window of opportunity where Mr. Boudram came out of that pipe, and you didn't take it, did you?
We did not send anybody into the pipe without a safe plan.
Or, sorry,
That's all
it's
right.
been a long time, and I keep interfering, and I shouldn't.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my position is, carrying you back to paragraph 50.
Yeah, I kind of forgot what we were talking about.
Sure. And I will take you back to where we were.
Yes.
Paragraph 50.
Yes.
Right? So my reading of that first bit of that paragraph, Mr. Archbold, Archbold, right? Is that OTSL and Hull Support and 2 other dive establishments, just 4 altogether, refused to dive. That's my understanding of it. Am I correct?
Did I use the word refused?
I was informed.
It sounds so bad.
advised that
They advised that,
they would not be
no,
able.
I didn't use the word refuse. They
Yes,
advised
yes,
that,
I'm absolutely. You did not use the word refuse.
Okay.
That's my terminology, but it amounts to about the same.
Well,
Right.
They considered the risk that they would be putting their men to, and they were not able to do
They
it.
were not able to dive into the pipeline to attempt a rescue of the missing divers. I don't see anything else beyond that.
Okay.
So I'm just taking you through the individual 4 persons or 4 entities you have identified. Let's
Yes.
start with the Coast Guard. You deal with the Coast Guard in paragraph 45 of your witness statement, but
Okay.
I mean, I really do think we've done the Coast Guard. You know,
right.
I mean,
I'm just breezing through the four entities. So Coast Guard says, I'm not trained, I don't have the equipment.
Yes.
Agreed?
Yes.
Yes. Mitchell Professional, I'm dealing with the people called by PARIA, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, or Heritage, right? So Mitchell Professionals say, my divers are big fellas, can't fit in a 30-inch pipe.
And that it's too risky.
No, but they say, we can't fit.
Okay.
We can't send a diver because our guys are too big. Yes?
I suppose he was taking into consideration the equipment as well.
Okay, but I'm just saying what I've read.
Yes.
My guys are too big. That's
Right.
all it says, not my guys and equipment, right? I see no evidence that OTSL, which is where we were a little while ago, was asked to do any diving. Do
Okay.
you agree with that?
That you don't see any evidence? Or that there is no evidence?
Okay, well, in my reading, from what you have said so far this afternoon and going through the witness statements submitted by OTSL, I do not see any requests was made
All right.
of them.
So I would have
by
to check,
PARIA.
I would have to go back
Okay.
to the incident commander and logistics section chief to verify that.
Okay.
About the request, well, as far as I know, it was requested of them to dive.
Okay. If we carried you to the witness statements, they're very brief, of both Mr. Donawa and Mr. Bertrand.
Well, I was actually referring to Colin and Michael.
Okay. So we could also take it that if OTSL doesn't have that they were asked to do any diving plan, rescue, operation, as the case may be, that there may be some merit in that, yes?
Sorry, say that again?
If we look at the witness statement submitted by OTSL,
Yes.
and there's no reference to PARIA asking them to conduct a rescue dive, rescue plan, rescue operation, any terminology,
Uh-huh.
we could agree that, at least from their evidence, that no request was made of them.
So what we call them for? Sorry,
all right, I'm going to bring this to an end. Mr. Maharaj, I think, very carefully took a number of these issues with the witness, and he was not prepared to agree to the detail as provided by Mr. Maharaj without looking at each individual document himself. That's his entitlement. We will be making the determination ultimately of what the evidence shows. I'm not sure that there is any value in your taking him through it again, because we're simply going to get back to where we were, which is unless you show him each and every single document, he's not going to agree. It doesn't matter, it seems to me, for these purposes. If you have a separate question in relation to what the outcome of that all is, then by all means ask it. But I don't think there's any value in taking him through it once again.
Chairman, all I was trying to elicit from him is that these people that were called, and he said they brought out all the resources, they were not asked to perform any task.
I know that point has been made, that's what I'm saying. That point has been made, I think, quite comprehensively by Mr. Maharaj. The witness has said what he has said. You're not going to be able to persuade him to say something different.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then I only have one more question for Mr.
All right.
Archibald. Mr. Archibald, you would have worked in Petrotrin or Trinmar, one of those entities prior to
Yes.
your employment in PARIA?
yeah, I worked at Petrotron.
During the, I think, 4.5 years you said, prior to joining PARIA?
I was in the refinery for 4.5 years prior to PARIA, yes.
During your time in Petrotrin, did any similar job as this one take place, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, while I was in the refinery, I don't remember.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that, Mr. Archibald. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ms. Alfonso.
Mr. Trebu Hansin. Have I pronounced that correctly? Or close enough, anyway.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. 100% accurate, yes.
Oh, marvellous. That's a first, I have to say, for me. But anyway, please proceed.
I do not have any questions for this witness.
That makes it even better. Where's Mr. Rabadar? All right.
Good afternoon,
Good
Commissioner.
afternoon.
Yes, I am Sharon Jagannath Mohammed. I act with Mr. Ramadar for the families of Faisal Kurban and Yusuf Henry, his daughter. Right. I just have one or two questions, very brief, in the interest of time,
Very well.
for this witness. Right. Good afternoon, good evening,
Hello.
Mr. Archibald.
Hello.
Right.
Remind me of your name again, please.
Sharon Jagannath Mohammed.
Sharon Ramatar Mohammed?
Jagannath Mohammed.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. Yes, Mr. Archibald. Now, I heard you mention and you give evidence that you all called several companies, Mitchell, Eastern, OTSL, Hall, and so on, right? Now, can you tell me if you all considered calling any other companies, such as, let me suggest some, Well Services, Shell, I don't know if you all call them in that small window of opportunity you all had.
I don't know. I
You
don't know
don't
if we
know.
call them, no.
And you are the planning section chief, but you don't know who was called and who was not called.
I don't know if that implies that the planning section chief should have done doing the calling, but no, I don't
Right.
know. Normally it's the logistics section chief,
Thank
but
you.
I was not advised if any other companies were called.
All right, great. Now, I know you all call NGC for the recovery, not the rescue. Now, the reason I ask this is because these companies, they have big pipelines, like the one in PARIA. Now, these companies, Shell, I know Shell, Well, NGC, they would have vast amount of resources that would, equipment that could go into pipes, such as Yarovi. Did anyone call any of these companies for assistance?
I would have to
In
find
that
out.
window of opportunity, sorry.
I would have to find out from the logistics section chief if any of those companies were called.
Right. Okay. So from that point, looking at Michael, another issue. Michael went into this pipe, right? You said he only went into like 10 feet into the horizontal.
Yeah, that's what he
Right.
reported, yes.
Right. Now, with that information, right, I mean, you all did not get the information in time, but even when you did get the information, did you think that if someone could go 10 feet, why not 200 feet? Because he came back out, let me explain, he came back out, no set of oil, no set of, the conditions was such that he could dive into the pipe. So if you could dive into 10 feet, what happened to the next 200 feet?
I mean, I could attempt to describe what you're entering vertically, foot downward. Might take 5 minutes, and then you're 10 minutes, and then you start traversing. But you would have to drag yourself because you're moving forward with your feet in a 30-inch line. You're carrying with you rescue equipment, and you really cannot swim. You would have to be dragging yourself. I don't know if I should get onto the ground and imitate if necessary, but
Please
okay,
don't.
accepted.
but it's a 30-inch line, and you cannot swim. You have to
Where's
move
Mr.
with-
Ramadar when we need him?
Yeah. and then at a certain point in time, you have reached, I think, your 75-minute limit, and then you have to come back. Well, according to the U.S. Navy tables, again, I'm not an expert, and you have to come back out. Else you would have to go through decompression, and then you have to switch because divers need to take 2 or 3 hours break. I've read 4.
All right, okay, thanks. Thanks. Okay. I understand what you're saying. Right. One more thing. Now, in terms of training,